What is up, everyone? We are back again with the second installment of our brand new shipment from 52 Toys, their Street Fighter 6 line, and we are looking at the Street Fighter 6 Ryu. This is a pretty interesting figure, a lot of talk about this guy online, some criticisms, some positive reviews, so we're going to go ahead and take a look for ourselves here in hand. I am really liking these boxes. Nice big window with great renders of the figure. You can see here inside of the package he's looking pretty good. So let's go ahead and break into this packaging and see how we like the figure. We have his sash piece here there he is in his blister pack. You see he has two alternative heads, 3 sets of hands, and a lot of really big effect pieces, which are really cool. We'll take a closer look at those here in a sec. The second blister, we have 2 stands as well as his Hadouken here. So this stand is going to be for the Hadouken, while the big stand is for the figure. But let's break him out of this blister and get a really good look at him. Now we're going with a more neutral lighting setup today because there was a lot of questions about his skin color, the glossiness, so I didn't want to affect that too much. So today we're going with a little more basic lighting and get a first look. There he is, shirtless with no sash. You see his pants, his feet. There you go. You know, looking pretty good, I will say. A lot of the criticisms about his body being overly glossy, oily looking are valid criticisms. I think you can see that pretty clearly here in the camera. He is a very glossy plastic. It seems like the chest piece more so even than the rest of the body, but you know, decent sculpt on here. Not great. It is a little sort of bulbous, a little plain in some of the details. In the musculature, arms look decent, but maybe it is just that glossy finish that is really giving it a weird look. Face sculpt, I'm liking right out of the box. Just like the Chun-Li, I think this is a better representation of the in-game character for Street Fighter 6 Ryu, even more so than the Revoltech line. So I do like the head sculpt. I think that's looking pretty solid. Looking good all around. He also, like the Chun-Li, has small feet. I'm not sure why they went with such small feet in the designs for these toys, but we had to point that out because it is something that is a standout detail. So there he is. I will also say there was a lot of criticism about his skin color being too dark, which I think it is a couple shades too dark for the Street Fighter 6 Ryu, if I'm being honest. I've seen pictures online where it looked a lot darker than it does here in hand, but overall I do think that it still is kind of weirdly dark, and definitely, you know, since he is a shirtless character, since you do see majority skin here, it does give it a bit of a weird look. He's definitely a little too tan, plus there is some additional darker shading in the muscle, which just gives the skin an even darker look overall. So let's take a quick look at his additional accessories. Here is his gritting teeth head sculpt. I think looks solid. Paint application is decent for what it is. Like, it's clean, maybe even too clean. It is a more realistic sculpt, so I would like to see a little more shading, a little better paint job there, but good looking sculpt on the head. Here is his screaming face, which looks good. You can see like the wrinkles in the brow and on the cheeks. I think they got the details in the sculpt down, but the paint is just not quite there to help that stand out. He has these sort of slightly open action hands here, which maybe these are his Hadouken hands. It's kind of hard to tell because he has this other pair of hands which are very similar. Like, if I put these side by side, it's pretty hard to see the difference other than, you know, the finger position, but these are very similar looking hands, so kind of hard to tell which one are his Hadouken pieces and which one are not. And then of course he has his closed gloved hands there, which I'm liking those closed hands. The gloves are looking really cool. Now here are some of his effect pieces, and these are really interesting effect pieces. You can see there's a fully molded fist, so these will peg onto his wrist and replace his hand entirely. It's not an effect piece that like slides over his hand, which would have been kind of nice because then you can reuse it for other figures. I guess you could still do that here, but you're going to be, again, replacing the entire hand. Then he has these really cool long effect pieces, which again have that molded hand there, so it's not slipping over the hand, it's completely replacing the hand. There's the right hand there. You can see it's a semi-translucent, kind of cloudy white, but overall a nicely sculpted effect piece. Now he does have some more effects here, and then probably his coolest effect piece is his Street Fighter 6 Hadouken, which looks really good. It has that nice spiraling tail, translucent blue gradation, from the front to the back. It just looks really good, super detailed. It is a slightly softer plastic, but not super bendable, but looking really cool. And as you saw, it has the stand that goes with that. And last but definitely not least is his soft goods sash piece that goes over his shoulder and drapes over his back there. It has this really cool ring, which even has some painted detail there in yellow, which is maybe kind of hard to see, but it has some sort of like inscribings on that. And this is really nice. It's got the frayed bottom. It is wired so you can pose it. So yeah, we're going to get this on him. I'm sure that's going to look really great, also to help cover up some of that sort of blaring glossy skin. But here is Ryu with his entire accessory loadout, both heads, his hands, and his effect pieces, as well as his stand. So, a pretty good amount of accessories here. Lots of effect pieces, which is really cool. Soft goods, which is nice for a figure that is, again, in this price range. From a overseas seller getting this guy imported, you're looking at, I would say, between $50 and $60, which, you would kind of expect a soft goods piece like this. But apparently the story that I'm told is that overseas this guy is retailing for like $35 to $40, which then this amount of accessories with the soft goods I think is a stellar price for what you're getting here. Overall, looking pretty decent. Outside of the skin, I think it's a solid looking figure. The look of him, the feel of him, he's nice and solid. This chest piece is a hard plastic. He is a harder ABS style plastic. His legs are softer, feel more PVC, with the crotch piece being probably the softest piece here to help his leg kick up and get out of the way of the articulation. And is this, and his little headband piece is actually pegged in and kind of articulated, so you can kind of get some movement out of there if you wanted to adjust that. But this is almost comparable, I would say, to like an SH Figuarts level of plastic and feel. A little, I would say maybe a step or two down. This is a little on the gummier side, and obviously, as you can see, the sort of glossy plastic that this guy has been catching hell for, and rightfully so, because I think if this guy was matte finish, and I think if they did get the skin tone correct, if he was like 2 shades lighter, this would be a really killer looking figure, to be honest. But this is what we ended up with, and we have to continue on with the review. And again, we're going to be looking not only at aesthetics, we're going to look at articulation, some posing, and then I will give you my final thoughts on if these 52 Toys Street Fighter 6 figures are worth it in the end. So let's go ahead and test his articulation to see if he moves as good as the Chun-Li figure from 52 Toys. Has a good range looking up there. Great range looking down. You can see his chin goes all the way down to his chest. He has a slightly different articulation setup than Chun-Li, but look at that. I mean, way past 90. That is an exceptional amount of movement out of that butterfly and shoulder joints. So what's really cool is not only does it have a peg into this butterfly joint here, it also goes into another large hinge, which gives it just tons of range there, which is really cool. You get your 360. Now let's go ahead and test. There you go. So you can see there's his butterfly fully extended forward. And look at that. And when you have both of them going, you can see how far over his chest he can cross his arms there. So probably some of the best forward range in butterfly joints out of any of the Street Fighter figures that I currently own. So that's really good to see and is going to make for some super cool Hadouken style poses. Let's see it going backwards. And again, since you're kind of cheating, you're kind of using that shoulder and butterfly joint, he gets a good range backwards. That looks really good. He has the upper bicep swivel. Nice and smooth there. Double jointed elbow. I think it's a good amount of range. A little bit of gappiness there. Would have liked to see that cleaned up some, but at full extension, you can see the gap there. I am liking though how smooth they've sculpted those joints. Let's go ahead and check his abdomen, his upper ab on a ball peg. That's just using the upper abdomen, and using the lower abdomen gets a ton of crunch, even more crunch than the Chun-Li, which I imagine moving back, he's going to get even more. Really nice abdomen there. Tons of range left. Good amount right. He starts to kind of run into that little belt piece there. But just really great movement. Lots of articulation in the ab crunch. I'm liking that. This is a floating piece. Like this part of his sort of, I think maybe like under clothing for his gi. So that does kind of move around some, but you know, looks good. Covers up that joint really nicely. Kicking forward, you can get him to 90 degrees just like that really easily. Since this is a softer piece, this one doesn't seem to be as soft as like the Chun-Li. So you can get it past 90, but not by a lot, to be honest. And there is no drop down there. You can go back about that far. He has an upper thigh swivel that moves pretty well there. Is this articulated? Yes, his belt can move. That is articulated. He has these really nice hidden double jointed knees from the front, so that looks, you know, nice and almost seamless. But let's see the range, and just so much range. Really liking that, all the way laying basically flat to the upper thigh. I will say some gapping there though. Again, if this piece was just a little bigger, that would cover up that large gap. But overall, I'm kind of liking the design of these knees, especially from the side, the silhouette here. The way they're sculpted, they're like nice curve. There's no weird steps, not a ton of like lippiness. Just, you know, pretty solid knee there, and I like the way they look when he's standing up straight, just like that. We have a nice little wash down here on the bottom of the gi. Looks like he's been, you know, roughing it, walking around in the dirt, which does hide a, not just a swivel, but a swivel like a ball peg, because this can move around like that, as well as spin 360 degrees. You can see his little foot there. I can't get over how little his foot is. That's kind of odd. I'm not sure why they made that choice, but he does have a larger hinge joint there than the Chun-Li. This one does feel better, like a little stronger, like he'll probably have the ability to balance a little better. You can see it lays flat like that. A lot of range going up too. Just would have been so much better if his foot was like, you know, just a tiny bit larger. And he does have a toe joint right there, his little tiny toes. And then at an angle there, you see he has a generous ankle rock. So overall, like the Chun-Li, impressive articulation. Really cool stuff they're doing here, especially like in the shoulders. Just move really well, but just highly posable figure here. 52 Toys, I think, doing a really, really good job with their engineering and articulation. You know, cool figure. Overall, looking pretty good. I just can't get past how glossy he is, especially in camera. Like, dude is super shiny and oily looking and just very, very dark. But let's go ahead and put on his sash, try out some of his other accessories, see how he looks. So here he is with his red sash, which is looking good. Was kind of confused how to get it on there correctly. Once you have it on there, it lays nice. That wire helps you kind of keep it in place. Looks good, honestly. Helps cover up some of his glossiness in his body. Really interesting little tidbit I also noticed is he has articulated hair back here. There's this little hair piece. So when if you move him and you have that gappiness in the neck, this little piece here is actually articulated and can move in and out, which is a really cool little detail. I don't know if other figures have done that before, but that's the first time I've had one like that on any figure that I've owned, so that's pretty cool. Now here is his Hadouken hands. Let's see if we can get him in a nice Hadouken pose. And there you go, you can see that with ease gets into his iconic Hadouken pose and looks really good doing it, honestly. Let's see if we can get him to balance. The Chun-Li, if you're having problems with her balancing because of how small her feet are. But yeah, he has much better balance and looks pretty dang good. Really cool, highly posable. Kind of liking this figure. Do I like him more than the Chun-Li? I don't know. There's some positives about him. I think he has just slightly better articulation, but overall aesthetic, I like the Chun-Li better. So they might be neck and neck considering all of that. But there's definitely a lot of room left for improvement here. So pretty strong figure, but let's go ahead and do some side-by-side comparisons. I'm going to bring back the Chun-Li. I'm going to bring a Ryu from another Street Fighter line just to set them side-by-side because I know their size and height and scale was a bit of an issue, so let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so let's get some side-by-side comparisons here with other Street Fighter toys. You see the Chun-Li and Ryu from 52 Toys is a more true 1/12 scale. Chun-Li is supposed to be 5'7", while Ryu is supposed to be 5'9", so they scale really well together here, as you can see, but they are much closer to the SH Figuarts Chun-Li here, just a slightly smaller scale than the Storm and Jada stuff, which you can see over here. The Jada and Storm Ryu are slightly larger in scale, just a bit taller and also just a little wider. You can see the head sizes here are drastically different. So the 52 Toys is going to be slightly under scale to match with the Jada and Storm, but it's close enough. I think you can kind of mix and match those pretty well. Let's go ahead and take a look now at the effect pieces. Here's his smaller punch effect. You can see the molded hand there. This is a slightly translucent, sort of milky white plastic that gives a really cool movement effect, sculpted really well. Like these effect pieces a lot. You get one for the left and right hand for each of these, but here is the larger version of that effect with the long trailing tail that really looks like that Street Fighter 6 effects that you see in game. This one is really cool. I like how large this is. You get one for the left and the right hands, which is really cool. And you can see you can use this here in multiple ways, and it just looks really cool and effective. Very dramatic effect piece, like it a lot. And of course his Hadouken. This is straight from the Street Fighter 6 game, this sort of spiraling tail Hadouken. Translucent blue plastic, looks fantastic. But it's time for final thoughts on the 52 Toys Street Fighter 6 Ryu. And I have to be honest, I'm a bit torn on this figure. I'm really liking the articulation and the engineering on this figure. It moves and poses really well. But on the flip side, I can't ignore the finish and the overall plastic feel of this figure. There's just some things I really do not like about it, that being some of the gumminess of the plastic that is used here, which in turn is kind of making joints like the knees just slightly loose feeling, the small feet, and of course that glossy finish and just way too tan of a coloring in the skin. I am liking some of the stuff they're doing here with the sculpt. I think the face sculpts are done really well. Some of the best looking Street Fighter 6 characters out there in figure form as far as the sculpt goes in the face, but the body and other pieces of this figure are just lacking a little bit in the sculpt area. And of course the paint. I wish they had a little bit better of a paint job throughout, especially in those face sculpts. The lack of paint on these heads and faces aren't doing these sculpts any justice. So there is definitely some room for them to improve here. I think this does feel like it's so close to being a home run figure, but it's just not quite there. I am loving the red sash and the soft goods. All of the accessories this guy comes with are really, really well done and add to the package, lots of effects. Lots of pieces here, especially if you are getting it close to that original retail price of $35 to $40. So if you are in an area of the world where you can get this guy for around $35, $40, I think this is a super solid figure, even with its shortcomings. But if you are somewhere where you need to pay import and everything else that comes along with that, and you're up there and around the $60 range, this is maybe a little too much for how this figure feels. It's just not quite there with other premium figures that you would get imported at around the same price. Now, him versus Chun-Li, I think I really like Chun-Li's aesthetic a lot more. I think they nailed it with the aesthetic of Chun-Li, but the articulation and the balance for this Ryu definitely outdoes the Chun-Li figure. Now, if you're just a Street Fighter 6 fan, if you love the look and design of these characters, and you're really into posability, these might be for you at any price point. But I have a hard time recommending these if you are a US collector like myself, and you're having to pay $50 to $60 for each of these figures. But 52 Toys, I think these as their initial launch for the Street Fighter 6 line, I think is a pretty solid debut. They see the comments and they see the feedback, and if they can improve on those things, being the plastic quality and the feel of that plastic and some of the finish, I think that 52 Toys can really make a name for themselves in the 1/12 Street Fighter action figure world, and it's going to be interesting to see how the community reacts to these figures. Like I said, I am torn on this guy. I would give him a tentative 1 thumbs up, just not quite there. There's a lot of good stuff here that I can almost ignore the bad, but unfortunately, some of the bad stuff, some of the pain points with this figure are just slightly outshining all of the good stuff that was done from 52 Toys with this Street Fighter 6 Ryu. But overall, I think a solid debut for the Street Fighter 6 characters out of 52 Toys. I'm looking forward to messing with these a little bit more, taking some photos for Instagram. I did do a full review of the Chun-Li figure, which posted yesterday, if you want to go check that out. And if you like this, if this was an informative review, please drop a like. That helps a lot with these kinds of videos. Are you going to be picking these up for yourself? Let me know in the comments if you're interested in grabbing these. And I want to thank you for spending some time with me here today, and I hope to see you in the next one.